So hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, or whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I am giving my thoughts on both Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2. But just before I do that, I should say what's at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to the podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, whatever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2. Yes, in this podcast today, I am reviewing the both Your Christmas or Mine films. So, last Christmas, the first Your Christmas or Mine movie came out on Prime Video, and I really wanted to watch it when it came out. The premise sounded interesting. I liked some of the cast members involved. It's around the same time Sex Education was still going. I was getting excited for Sex Education Season 4. Unfortunately, it was a big disappointment, but I was getting excited for Sex Education Season 4 last Christmas, and the main star of Sex Education, which of course Asa Butterfield, was the main star of this film, was the main star of the first Your Christmas or Mine. So when I saw that he was involved, I thought, you know what, that looks like a really fun and entertaining and funny Christmas film that looks like it's going to be right up my alley. Unfortunately, last year I did not get around to watching it though, simply because I was too busy. I had uni work, I had band stuff, playing a brass band, so I had a bunch of that stuff going on. Yeah, I was just too busy last Christmas to check out the first Your Christmas or Mine. I must admit, I pretty much forgot about that film, the first Your Christmas or Mine film, until a couple of months ago, when I heard that a sequel was in production with the entire same cast returning. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to do a double whammy this Christmas then. I'm going to watch both films together, both Your Christmas or Mine films together, and see how good they are. Because I heard some mixed things about it. Some people actually quite enjoyed the first film, some people didn't enjoy the first film too much. And I wanted to see how well the sequel was going to do as well. I wanted to see how good it was going to be. So I made a note of doing that this Christmas, watching both Your Christmas or Mine films. And that's exactly what I did when the second Your Christmas or Mine film became available on Prime Video, because they're both Prime Video productions. I don't think either film had a theatrical release at all. They both went straight to streaming services. And all I'll say about that is I can tell why, but I'll get onto that a bit later. Anyway, both film stars, what he said, Asa Butterfield in the main role, Cole Kirk as his love interest, alongside Daniel Mays, Alex Jennings, Angela Griffin, and David Bradley. And the first one was a small one for Mark Heap, which many people might know as Jim from Friday Night Dinner. He's the one with the dog. I've only seen a couple episodes of Friday Night Dinner quite a while ago, so I don't really remember that show too well, but I remember him in it. It was also in Space, in which he played one of the best characters. Anyway, the second film has the addition of Jane Krakowski, which many might know as Jenna from 30 Rock, which is one of the best American sitcoms I have seen ever. Anyway, both films have quite good casts. Very British casts at that. Jane Krakowski isn't British, she's American, but still, both films have a very British feel to them. And let's talk about the first film first. Why don't we? Let's start off with the first film. That would make sense. So, the plot of this first film, the plot of the first Your Christmas or Mine, goes as follows. This relatively newly formed couple want to spend Christmas with one another, and this relatively this relatively newly formed couple consists of Asa Butterfield's character and Cole Kirk's character. And they want to spend Christmas with one another because they are falling in love. It's a classic Christmas rom-com sort of idea. But the couple also don't want to spend Christmas away from their families. So they make the exact same last minute decision to surprise each other at the opposite family homes. And that's quite an interesting it's not an interesting idea, but it's a clever idea and it's a unique premise. I'm more for original ideas, and that's exactly what the premise for this film has. It's original, it's clever to a degree. It's about as clever as you can get for a Christmas film like this. It has some funny twists in the first hour. It has some entertaining moments in the first hour of that first Your Christmas on Mine. Funny characters, heartwarming moments. And I like the whole idea of this culture clash because Asa Butterfield's family, who his new girlfriend ends up spending most of Christmas with, is very posh, is very middle class, is very high class, And then Cole Kirk's family, who Asa Butterfield's character spends a lot of Christmas with, is very working class and has a big family, whilst Asa Butterfield's family mainly consists of his dad. Cole Kirk's family consists of two younger brothers, an aunt who is very hands-on, and a very caring mother and father and her grandparents. So there's much more of a family on her side, and I like the whole idea of the culture clash. And I found the first hour of Your Christmas or Mine, the first Your Christmas on Mine, quite entertaining. I was enjoying myself. Then you get to the second half an hour of that film, though. The first one is about 90 minutes long, and the second half an hour is so mushy. The last half an hour of the film is so mushy, with exaggerated, mushy moments between the main two characters. All this sentimental stuff about what Christmas is really about, the messages surrounding Christmas, wanting to spend Christmas together, and it becomes really cringeworthy to the point that I was watching the first film in my bed back there and I couldn't stop putting my head into the pillows because of how cringeworthy it was. I was squinting like, oh god, I can't watch because of how cheesy and cringy it is. It just, I don't know, the last half an hour of that film really didn't work for me that well. The first hour I found really entertaining, and then it becomes this mushy thing about I love you but I don't know you, and now I'm spending Christmas with your family and I don't want to, and actually you've got another fiance or whatever. It just becomes all mushy and too melodramatic. And the ending to the first film is very contrived, and literally I could barely watch it because, again, of how cringeworthy it was. The ending to the first film consists of both families together, all wearing Christmas jumpers and smiling as you sit down to eat a Christmas dinner. That's what the end of the first film consists of. And I was sitting there going, oh my god, this is... What? No! Both families were meant to be on the complete opposite sides of the UK at the start of the day, and then somehow they've come together at this house, and I don't understand. Well, I understood the end of the first film, I don't know what I'm saying. I understood the end of the first film, but I didn't really like it. That being said, the first film had more positive to say about the first film than negative stuff to say. So I thought I'd give the second film a go. And the second film has a kind of similar mix-up premise, Well, the whole idea of Your Christmas or Mine, that's the gist of the film, because they end up spending Christmases at each other's places. And the second film has, as I mentioned, a kind of similar premise, where both families spend Christmas in a luxury ski resort in the Austrian Alps. However, after a mix-up at the airport, another turbulent family Christmas tests the central couple's relationship. And as already mentioned, pretty much the same cast from the first film is back in the sequel. And here's the thing about the sequel. It feels more contrived. It feels more unbelievable. The whole setup doesn't quite work, because you would think that Alex Jennings' character, who plays Asa Butterfield's dad, who's meant to be very posh, just wouldn't go for the resort he is meant to be staying in. You don't believe that he would stay in it for 1 second. Also, the second film is more formulaic. It feels more unnecessary. It doesn't necessarily feel like we needed the second film to happen after the first film. The first film has quite a well-rounded ending, and then you get to the second film, it's like, oh, we're going to carry this story on because we can, and it didn't quite have the same narrative flow as the first one. It didn't quite have that same flow. That being said, it has less melodrama than the first film, and I enjoyed watching the sequel. I enjoyed watching Your Christmas or Mine too, more than I expected to. Especially because I didn't really like the first film. Well, I liked the first one, I thought it was okay, but I didn't think it was great. And then I was watching the sequel, I was watching the first hour of this sequel going, actually, this is not too bad. It has enough moments that I'm enjoying it. I'm going along with it. It's entertaining, and you know what? I am finding it funnier than I expected to, and I like the culture clash once again. I liked how the second film focused more on the culture clash. There was plenty in the sequel which I enjoyed. I've seen worse Christmas movies than Your Christmas or Mine too. And I might even say that parts of the second film work better than the first film. Although it does do that thing that a lot of comedy movie sequels in general do, where they go on holiday. It feels like they don't really know what to do in a comedy movie sequel, so they go, let's take the main characters on holiday this time and see them in a different location. And that's exactly what Your Christmas or Mine 2 does. And I don't know if it needed to do that. I actually think if it stayed on the same locations as the first film, it may have worked better, but I understand why they did it. I didn't think it needed to be done. I enjoyed the second film. I didn't think it was awful. I mean, it still has those mushy moments, those melodramatic moments, and the big finale to Your Christmas or Mine 2 is really silly and really unbelievable. And I was talking about before, when I was speaking about the first Your Christmas or Mine film, I was saying I had my head in the pillows because of how cringeworthy I was finding it. I just couldn't watch what was on the screen. I felt that even more with the second film. With the finale to the second film, I was literally like, oh my god, this is so cringeworthy, and it's so predictable for a rom-com as well. I'm not going to go into detail in case people haven't seen the sequel and you're dying to, but the finale of the film basically takes place at an airport, which is very, well, it's very rom-com, isn't that? That's very rom-com. That's very much what you'd expect from a romantic comedy. But, as I've already said, I've seen worse Christmas movies. I've seen worse Christmas movies this year for the first time than these films. Some quote-unquote classic Christmas movies that I watched for the first time this year. I watched them and I went, wow, this is really bad. Like the Santa Claus movie from the 1980s. Not the one with Tim Allen, the other one. I watched that for the first time. Well, for the first time in a very, very long while. Barely remembered anything about it. And it was just awful. And I enjoyed myself more with these films, more with the both Your Christmas or Mine movies, than I did with that film. And overall, both films are okay in terms of quality. They are watchable. They're not great films. But for me, what makes both films work are the family dynamic. The family dynamics between the two families. And it sort of reminds me of Gavin and Stacey, which are one of my all-time favourite sitcoms. And I really wish they would bring that back for a final fourth series. I really wish they would do that, and I actually have a theory that they will be doing that sometime next year. But that's another topic for another day. These films, Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2, which I'm discussing about in this podcast today, which I keep saying over and over again. I keep saying the title of both films. But these two films remind me a lot of Gavin and Stacey, where the central couple, the central main characters, are the worst two characters in the entire thing. In the Your Christmas or Mine films, Asa Butterfield and Cora Kurt's characters are really not that interesting and not terribly likeable characters, and I don't totally buy into their romance. And I feel similar about Gavin and Stacey in Gavin and Stacey. You know, I buy into the romance more between Gavin and Stacey in Gavin and Stacey than I do than the two main characters in these two films. But at the same time, I still don't care about their relationship too much. And what makes Gavin and Stacey work for me on such a high level is the family dynamic, and seeing, you know, Gavin's best friend, which is Smithy, played by James Corden in that show, and Stacey's best friend, which is Vanessa, and she's played by, what's the actor's name on the top of my head? Ruth Jones, isn't it? I've got it right. Is it Ruth Jones? Yes, Ruth Jones, yeah. Seeing those relationships is the best part of that show. And then when you see this family from Wales meet with this family from London, it's really funny when you see these two families come together. And that aspect of Gavin and Stacey also is used again in Your Christmas or Mine. In both Your Christmas or Mine films, where there's two families and they come from very different backgrounds, but they're coming together for Christmas because of the central couple. And the best aspects of these films is the families coming together and the family dynamics. You know, what's his name here? I'm going to get it back up. Daniel Mays as the female in the couple's father. Daniel Mays as the father of the female in the couple, the father of Cora Kurt's character, is just so funny to watch in both Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2. And Alex Jennings, who plays Asa Butterfield's father in these films, is really funny to watch. And yeah, when you see these families come together, that's when these films work. And that's why I think these films work, because when you see the two families come together, it reminded me a lot of Gavin and Stacey. And that's actually why I enjoyed these films more than I expected to. The family dynamics and seeing these two very different families coming from very different backgrounds come together for Christmas. That is really why the films work for me, because they remind me of Gavin and Stacey, and they have that similar sort of comedy that Gavin and Stacey does, or that Gavin and Stacey did, should I say, because it's not continuing as of yet, but it had that same sort of comedy that Gavin and Stacey had. It had that same sort of the same sort of plots that Gavin and Stacey had, and it had the same sort of character relationships, and it is entertaining. These films are entertaining to watch. They're not completely unwatchable, except for the mushy parts. If you exclude the mushy parts, they're actually not too bad. I think the first hours of both Your Christmas or Mine films work well. I'm not going to say they work very well, but I think they work well enough. And yeah, I enjoy both films, but they're also not great. Right, so this is an add-on. One thing I've got to mention when I do my podcast on Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2 is this: how fluffy these films are. These films, they're very fluffy Christmas movies in terms of, I've already spoken about it, about how the first film ends with both families together, all smiling with Christmas jumpers, having a Christmas dinner, and it's always snowing in both films. It's always trying to reinforce that it's Christmas and everything. Yeah, they are very fluffy films. They don't really get under the surface level with any of the characters or the story itself, to the point the story is very predictable in both movies. Both films have very predictable plots and narratives, and yeah, it's Christmas fluff, but it's okay Christmas fluff, you know? They're not terrible to watch. And I wanted to mention that because I put it in the title of this podcast, and I do think, as far as fluffy Christmas films go, this is okay. You know, again, I've seen worse. They're very fluffy Christmas movies, and they might make you smile. So that's another thing that I actually kind of like about them. And I can see why they are streaming films. I can certainly see why these are Christmas streaming movies. That being said, I would watch a third Your Christmas or Mine film. I would definitely watch it because, I don't know, I enjoy seeing these characters. They're not great films, the characters are one-dimensional, but it's enjoyable to watch these families come together, the family dynamics. It reminded me a lot of Gavin and Stacey, and that's why I ultimately enjoy these films. I think they are okay. And so, all in all, I would say that both Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2, I would say that they were 6.5 out of 10. If I was to rate both of the films together, I'd say they're a 6.5 out of 10. In fact, if I was to rate both films individually, I'd say the first film, the first Your Christmas or Mine, is a 6.5 out of 10. And then I'd say the sequel's also a 6.5 out of 10. I'd give films I just find entertaining and good enough around a 6 out of 10. And I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10 because I do think some of the twists in these films are ever so slightly clever. You know, ever so slightly clever. And I do think some of the comedy, you know, the comedy made me laugh. Which is more than I can say than for some Christmas films. For some Christmas comedies at that. You know, the comedy did make me laugh in these two films. More than I expected them to. When I was sitting down to watch the sequel, I didn't think the comedy would work for me that well. And then I actually ended up finding parts of the second film funnier than parts of the first film. I still think the first film is overall a funnier film, but I do think the second film has some comedy in there, some good comedy at that. So yeah, I think that's why I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10. That's why I'm giving both of these films a 6.5 out of 10, because they are entertaining and they are okay and they deliver some good comedy. So they are worthy of the watchable ranking for me, if you will. They're fine. They're okay. There's nothing offensively bad about these Christmas movies. And you would think that from some of the reviews, there is something really offensively bad about these Christmas movies, but there really isn't. Yeah, they're watchable. And I've seen some Christmas movies, you know, some Walmart, Channel 5 Christmas films over the past month or so, which are unwatchable. So yeah, I think these movies are good enough. I enjoy seeing these casts together. I enjoy seeing the family dynamics. They're entertaining. There's some funny twists in these films. They are very predictable. They are very, very predictable and very mushy, and too mushy for my liking at times, and too melodramatic for my liking at times too. But, you know, they're okay. They're okay Christmas streaming films. And that's good enough for me. And so, all in all, as what he said, I'm going to say that both Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2 are a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen either Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2, if you've seen both films even, then please let me know your thoughts on them in the comment section below. Maybe you loved the film, maybe you loved the first film, hated the second film, or maybe you hated the first film, loved the second film. Whatever your thoughts are on Your Christmas or Mine 1 and 2, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As we said, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.